There's not much protocol, so just members, and if there are any members of the diplomatic corps, our colleagues from CSOs, from the private sector, academia and research, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to also acknowledge our colleagues from Aid Data, research lab at William and Mary College, Divya Matthew, as well as Brian Burgess. Karibuni sana Tanzania, welcome to Tanzania. And welcome to this very important dissemination event for investing in Tanzania's people, valuing the US-Tanzania partnership for prosperity. Without any further ado, I would like to invite Rapport's Executive Director, Dr. Donald Mari, to give his welcoming remarks before we proceed to the findings of the report. Karibu, Dr. Mari.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today to participate at the launch of the study report titled Investing in Tanzania's People, Valuing the US-Tanzania Partnership for Prosperity. Let me recognize the presence of colleagues from Aid Data at the College of William and Mary in the United States, Divya Matthew and Brian Burgess. I know that we are also supposed to have staff from the US Embassy and USAID. If they're already here, probably they are on their way. Many partners in the room from the government of Tanzania. I think I've seen one from Center for Foreign Relations, the private sector, civil society organizations, academic institutions, universities, research organizations, and colleagues from Rapport, colleagues from the media, and all invited participants. I'm pleased to welcome you this morning to this event. It's a learning event in which we will hear the findings of the report, but also a panel that will discuss some of these findings, some of the various outcomes of the cooperation and partnership between the United States and Tanzania. And as you are all aware, there being a very long history of US-Tanzania partnership, and I've seen many of you in the room who we work together in different areas, in agriculture, issues of governance, research, education, many areas in which the United States and Tanzania has collaborated in diplomacy, defense, private investments, trade, and others. As you recall, last year and the year before last, we had a commemoration of the 60 years of Tanzania-US cooperation, and we had a series of workshops named the Pamoja 60 series, in which we had workshops on issues of diplomacy. We had a debate also on issues of education, in which we engaged in the issues of STEM. I think we held this event at Nelson Mandela. There was an area of media and civil society participation, free press. This was held in Mwanza, and then agriculture cooperation in SUA. So today we moved into a different direction rather than holding workshops in which we debate our historical relationship. We now analyze it using the data. So it's a discussion that is based on a study that we collaborated with the College of William and Mary. And in fact, I would say that it's not the first time that we have collaborated with this college to undertake a joint research. And it is part of our history as a report to collaborate with the universities and research institutions and think tanks around the globe. And that we're continuing with this spirit. And thank you very much, the College of William and Mary, for picking Rapport as your trusted partner. And we will continue to be a trusted partner with other institutions. So this study is really more focused. It's based on data, covering wide range of areas. It's a holistic in approach, focusing not only on official development assistance, but also on investments by private foundations, areas of trade and investments by the private sector, and others. And as you will see from the presentations that are to follow immediately after my welcoming remarks, we have seen how United States and the government and other stakeholders have contributed to Tanzania in 3 areas. One is on economic competitiveness and productivity. The second is on the quality of life and livelihoods. And the third is on sustainable and democratic society. The details will come from the presentations, and my role was to give a welcoming remarks. And thank you again for being here. And I think it's now time to hear from the authors to tell us what they have found. So I'll hand this over back to Stephen. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. Just a point of to inform everyone is that this report was initially launched in Dodoma on May 3rd, which was World Press Freedom Day, if I'm correct. Okay, so right now, I would like to invite the authors to come and present. We have report authors and 8 data authors. So who will be starting? So Dr. Katera, karibu. Presentation.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Stephen, for opportunity to present this report. As was mentioned by Stephen and the Executive Director, this is a joint report that has been co-authored by Rapport and William and Mary Aid Data. And it focuses on investment that the U.S. government and its institutions have provided to the government of Tanzania. Yeah, basically we are looking at the bigger picture. The whole society of U.S., including the government itself through USAID, but also companies that are coming to invest in this country in different ways, but also philanthropies that have been supporting the country. There are a lot of foundations from U.S. that have provided support to the government, but also to institutions within Tanzania in the education sector, in the health sector, in investment, private sector, and so on and so forth. But also there are individuals that have been supporting Tanzania as a whole in different perspectives. Then we are looking at the financial inputs that have been directed to the development projects, but also favorable policies. We know that the government generally, US have been supporting Tanzania in favorable policies, like issues around good governance, which are policies that have to do with people's engagement in their development. A lot of support have been challenged in this area, but also we have downstream support. So it's basically, generally, the kind of different support that have been coming from US to Tanzania. So if you look, US is one of the biggest support, actually. Government, Tanzania, leading indirect bilateral support in Tanzania. And we shall provide actual evidence on how we compare the US support from other kind of supports. If you look into the graph here, on average, every year the government the country, as Tanzania, is receiving about close to $4 million US in different ways, and mostly supporting the health sector. And if you look at the areas that they are supporting, combating malaria, but also HIV/AIDS. And if you look at the graph below, you'll see the number of deaths from the HIV-related diseases, close to 1 million. But then if you look at through the support that the HIV/AIDS control have been receiving, you can see now increasing trend of the, you can see the death started to decrease. Death were increasing and then decreasing, but then the support was increasing with decreasing number of deaths. But also you can see in the food security, this is an area that the US government has provided Tanzania. Initially, they were providing fund for food, but then over time, that kind of support has shifted from provided funding for food, but supporting the agriculture sector now to produce, therefore supporting local production of food in Tanzania. So you can see over time the trend in support, providing direct funding for food security is going down, but then supporting the agriculture, local production has increased. So you can see that even the nature of support that you are receiving is becoming more and more useful in terms of supporting local productivity and local capacity to produce its own food. Over time, again, infrastructure. This is an important area for sustainable development, road, electricity, and you can see over time there's been a continuous increase in the support in that area. You can see a lot of money coming into supporting the sector. And then here, we have been, as Executive Director mentioned earlier, we have been receiving support in our army military training. So you can see a number of people going to be trained in US in different aspects of the military, from peacekeeping operations, international military education and training, combating terrorism fellowship program, Department of Homeland Security, US Coast Guard activities, regional centers for security studies. So there are different aspects of the security of the military, that the military security that the government has been receiving. And in total, almost 10,000 people have been trained in the span of last 10 years. And I think I would like now to welcome Divya to proceed with other forms of support that the government has been receiving from US. Divya. Yes.
All right, so I'll pick up right where Dr. Lucas left off. Continuing to talk about the different ways in which the US and Tanzania partner together, and continuing to stay on government support. So this slide is providing statistics about partnership. The US government doesn't work by itself. It works sometimes bilaterally and sometimes through multilateral channels. There are UN agencies, other international organizations, and a lot of US government funding. About a quarter of it is channeled through these channels which are in partnership with other organizations to coordinate the effort on the ground in Tanzania. And most of these investments go into priority sectors like infrastructure and public health. Okay, so this slide talks about investments that US companies, so we've moved from government to private companies investing in Tanzania. Some of the biggest sectors include energy-related, both coal, oil and gas, fossil fuel energy, as well as renewable energy. And then further down the list in the top 10 sectors, you'll also see that hotels and tourism, food and beverages, so industries that are of priority to the Tanzanian government itself that they're continuing to promote, is also an area that US companies are interested in investing in. Partnering on trade. As you can see from this graph, the trade balance has been in Tanzania's favor for the last 5 to 7 years. In about 2015, we see that exports to the US from Tanzania have now gone above imports from the US to Tanzania. So very much in Tanzania's favor, the partnership on trade. Between 2009 and 2022, Tanzania's duty-free exports to the US have increased by 4,500%, so a 45-time increase. Moving on to Tanzanian students in higher education in the US. Every year, about 1,100 Tanzanian students and scholars come to universities through exchange programs, to fellowships in the US. We see this as a continuing partnership because it's not limited to the time that students spend in a university. I know many people here have participated in some of these exchanges, have also been trained by professors who've studied at world-class universities in the US, come back to Tanzania to participate here in higher education through teaching, as well as participating in the workforce. And we see this as a tie that connects the labor force between both countries. Another area where we see a connection between the two countries is through private foundations. These include the Gates Foundation, the Hilton Foundation, Packard, the MacArthur Foundation, among many others. We found at least 22 private foundations and philanthropies which mobilized almost $100 million every year in support of Tanzania. Apart from big foundations, microloans and crowdfunding platforms are also a means by which people from both countries are able to connect to each other. And these foundations often make investments in public health, in education, and in economic development. One thing I should mention about the slides, when you see the y-axis with the dollar figure there, that is in millions of US dollars, 2022 numbers. Okay. So in this slide, we're looking at two other channels of connection between our two countries, the US and Tanzania. The US is a top market for tourism to Tanzania, which we know is a priority sector for the government here, as well as remittances flowing to Tanzania from the US have also continued to grow and continue to be a source of economic connection between the two countries. On this slide, I think the figures speak for themselves. Primary education has historically and continues to be a priority for US partnership with Tanzania. USAID alone has invested in improving learning outcomes for millions of children by supporting primary education. And looking at some of the testing and literacy data, we see that in recent years, girls have started to outperform boys in primary education metrics. And although this wasn't a planned outcome, it is an encouraging note to see girls perform well. And finally, the financial data is only one part of the picture. A big part of the connection between two countries is about perceptions. It's about how people feel about each other. And so for this project, one of the things that we wanted to make sure we did was capture how leaders in Tanzania feel or perceive their connection with the US's partnership in development. So we did this by conducting two types of data collection. One was a snap poll, a short survey that was conducted online, and another was interviews done on the ground. We captured perceptions from around 150 leaders from the government, from civil society. I would be curious if some of you in the room had participated in some of either our snap poll or the interviews. And across the board, we found that on average, over 60% of leaders in Tanzania recognize the US as a useful partner in environmental, social, and governance sectors. So specifically, the US was seen as an engaged partner, meaning that it was active and making meaningful contribution. It was seen as a dynamic partner where different parts of the US society, so sometimes it's the government that's best suited to partner, sometimes it's companies, sometimes it's civil society organizations who are able to partner most effectively together. And there was a use case in which each of these parts of US society was able to contribute. Working with the US partners was also seen as credible. Leaders that we surveyed or interviewed recognized that working with a US organization was a boost to the work and the credibility of their work. And finally, leaders in Tanzania recognized the US as most helpful when they were able to address critical gaps in Tanzania's own development vision. So there was an emphasis on partnering together meaningfully in cooperation with each other, meaning we cannot be working in isolation, but collaborate and coordinate on development partnership. I think that brings us to the end of findings from the report. A very brief methodological note. We analyzed historical data, financial data, a lot of foreign assistance data, World Bank indicators, and I mentioned the survey and interviews. But thank you so much for listening. We're happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Lucas and Divya. Now it's the opportunity for everyone to participate in terms of giving your comments or asking questions. So, karibuni sana. Just show your hands. Please introduce yourself and the institution that you represent, and go on with your comment or question. Karibuni.
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful presentation. My name is Marty Daniel. I'm Executive Director of Help Age Tanzania. Yeah, the presentation was really good. My simple question, because it was very brief. I don't know from the findings and from the presentation and the analysis which you have made, is there any recommendation, for instance, which probably can actually guide, the relationship and the kind of investment which probably United States is providing to Tanzania? Did you come up with any recommendation of the future direction to inform the future direction? That will be my first question. The second question which I'm having, and I have to declare the interest, because I'm coming from the local organization which is working with the older people and the people with the disability. And from our experience, there has been really very little, support when it comes to the question of older people. I mean, it's actually, all the support is actually handing, probably to young people, which is good. But because of a life cycle approach, we would have expected that, there will be also some kind of interest if we wanted to address the poverty in Tanzania and the well-being, to think about the other segment of the population. The last question which I'm having from your presentation is related to the comment which was made by the second, I cannot remember her name, sorry, so I don't want to misquote the name, that's not good. But you said based on the support which you have been providing around the education, now you have started to see that girls are performing better, which is really good, but it is likely to create, some kind of a challenge. Now, are you thinking of really addressing such kind of gap, which we have started to see, so that both, girls and, boys can actually, both of them can perform better, just to address this kind of imbalance? So these are my three questions. I will be really pleased to get your clarification around it. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a few more questions. So we'll start with the gentleman at the table here, and then Mr. Tamayamali in the back.
Thank you. My name is Apolinari Tamayamali. I'm a retired person from the government, specialty of governance issues. I would like to ask a question on issues of sustainability. How this partnership is sustainable between Tanzania and USA? Because apart from the US to be a market for tourism, I did not see any other issues. So I'd like to see from this study how this partnership is sustainable from point of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tamayamali. There's a gentleman right here.
Thank you very much. My name is Godwin from Dr. Salim Ahmed Salim, Center for Foreign Relations. I'm a lecturer there. I heard your presentation of the report. It was so nice. And indeed, about the issues of diplomacy and partnership. My note is on the methodology, but again, on the question of sampling, and I'll find something else. You mentioned about, you said, well, at least 100 leaders you interviewed. And the report talks about valuing US Tanzanian partnership, but investing in Tanzanian people. Why did you choose leaders as your only sample without including the locals from the grassroots or those who are affected directly by the US relations? Because there might be some biasness in the response when you only categorize leaders to give answers while there are people who are affected by this kind of relationship. That's number one. Number two is all about the areas that US has been selecting to deal with Tanzania's issues of health, issues of defense and security. Why those areas which, to my perspective, they have a little contribution in development, far sure than some of the areas which might be more relevant in the current relation that Tanzania needs with the international system, including science and technologies, areas of economic, direct development that might touch the people.
Thank you very much. My name is Aim Tonga. I'm from USID Tumela as a senior capacity building specialist. I want to congratulate the authors of the report, Ripoa and AData. I have two questions. One is you mentioned that about 1 million people have been prevented from death of HIV and AIDS. And in Tanzania, we know from the US investment in the country, and we know there are other also huge investors in this area, like the Global Fund for HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis. Is this 1 million contribution, or maybe how did you reach to this number? Second, you mentioned several areas where the US government have been investing in Tanzania. Do you have any recommendation of which area maybe you recommend that the US should invest in the next 5 or 10 years? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'll allow the authors to respond to some of these questions. You can use this podium.
Okay, thank you very much for good questions. I will respond to a few questions, but I'm sure others will respond. But of course, authors here, beyond those that you see on the table, we have other authors that are sitting there. They can also contribute to the discussion. I will start by the first question that was raised by Mr. McDaniel on whether we have the report. Definitely the report was the presentation is very brief, taking into account issues around time and whatever. We have a lot of discussions in the book that will actually see it after this presentation. And there are a lot of recommendations on areas that need further, there are challenges of the support that is coming from US. What need to be done to address those challenges, but areas that the support is doing well so that they can capitalize on that. So this caters for the question that you raised, but also the question that was raised by Madam Wamtonga. And I would like also to respond to a question about the methodology that was raised by Godwin. Basically, I fully agree that the support can affect different people. But of course, the people at the grassroots, don't know that this is coming from USAID, this is coming from Danida, they just see support coming, but it's very difficult for them to distinguish that this kind of support is coming from Danida, this is from SIDA, this is from USAID, they can't do that. So what we did is to look at the institutions that have experienced support from the US government. And when we say leader, we had to interview a key person in that institution who will have more information, like person who is dealing with finance, for instance, knowing different kind of finances that are coming from that are coming in the institution and what are the sources. So when we are saying about leaders, we mean the head of those institutions that we visited. That is what we meant. But also, you also raised an issue about supporting defense and not the other things. But defense is one area that they support. But you know, for instance, Ministry of Health, they support a lot in the malaria and HIV/AIDS they have supported. But also in the education sector. If you look at the people inside here, you'll see a lot of them that they have gone to US through scholarship that they are provided by the US government, but also US private sector and the foundations. You also see issues, you saw the trade trend, that over time, the terms of trade is in favor of Tanzania. We have now less import from US, but more export earnings from Europe. So defense is one area, but there are a lot of other areas that the government and generally Tanzania is getting. I can hand over now to my team.
To the second gentleman's question, I just wanted to pick up where Dr. Lucas left off. On, I think, the question of sustainability, that's a piece we wanted to explore, and we explored a little bit more in depth in the report itself than we were able to touch on in the presentation. But one of the stories we found throughout our research is the diversity of flows from the US to Tanzania is the bedrock of a lot of sustainability moving forward, we believe. That it's not the story of just aid, which relies on a congressional funding cycle and a couple of years of development funding, but it's really shifting from bilateral aid, multilateral aid, to a more complex network of private sector actors, investment, foreign direct investment in particular. We saw that after 2013 in Power Africa, US companies, with a little help from the government, want to come and invest in Tanzania in long-term partnerships. So these are not one-off aid projects, but these are direct investment in energy production, oil facilities, factories, and this moves the onus not from kind of a one-sided relationship, but to a much deeper partnership that we think has more resilience moving forward, since both parties have some stake in the game. We also wanted to touch on, we think that historically the US has been a leading partner in health. That's one of the specialties that the US invested in over the last 50 years. But as we're moving forward, we recognize that the new decades will have a new set of challenges. So we are seeing more investment in infrastructure sectors, economic development, moving to more value-added sectors. We see that across the portfolio of US engagements, we're more active in, I think, the economic growth areas and less reliant entirely on health benefits and social sector projects. Yeah, and finally, we wanted to give more recommendations in the report, but we think that one of the important things underwriting the US-Tanzania partnership is that those recommendations are borne out together and thought through together. So one of the encouraging pieces we found is that a lot of those trends that it's touched on are also trends that are highlighted in the national development plans. So in thinking about moving to more complex economic projects, for example, in agriculture, one of the pieces we found is that we're moving away from, the US is moving away from giving food aid into investing in agricultural production, in agro industries, high value add products that can be exported and have a more material benefit to the economy and the export markets in general. We also find that US investment in energy and resource sectors is not like most other partners with Tanzania that are concentrated mostly on raw materials and ores. The US is much more engaged in finished or processed goods that have follow-on effects to the Tanzanian economy that are more in line with the National Development Plan for 24 and 25?
Thank you. I'll start with the easiest question for me. My name is Divya. Please find me after, and I'd be happy to discuss more of the report with any of you. I'll pick up a few questions that my colleagues, some of which they've addressed. Maybe I'll start with the one on how do we address issues raised by the imbalance in girls' and boys' education outcome, right, at the primary level. First, I don't think we're yet at an imbalance where it's going to be drastic. Girls and boys are performing pretty much on par. We're seeing a slightly better performance by girls at the primary level. But how do we anticipate looking to the future, anticipate some of the issues that might come up, and how do we address them? And I see a number of ways in which the US and Tanzania already partner that could address some of those issues. One is that we don't want it to become bottlenecks, right? That students perform really well at the primary level and then there are no opportunities when it comes to higher education. And so that's where I think partnering at the higher education level, partnering in ways that create jobs. Again, from the report, you'll see the numbers, but some of these business investments, trade partnerships also create jobs. That means when children are educated, young adults are educated, and then it's time for them to join the labor force, we need to have adequate jobs for them to be employed and be able to contribute. A different way in which I think the partnership addresses some of these imbalances is through, as Dr. Lucas mentioned in the presentation in the beginning, programming that works on democracy, social sectors, strengthening the social fabric. And I think that's a key part of women's empowerment, women's participation in society, which also includes men. It can't happen in isolation. And I think some of the programming around those sectors are designed to address some of those imbalances. To the question on sustainability, Brian took that question, but also very quickly, as Dr. Donald mentioned at the beginning, it's been over 60 years of partnership between the two countries. And so I think that is the evidence for sustainability and that we continue to collaborate in the future because there's a strong history and a foundation that it builds on. I think a couple of people raised the question about sampling leaders and not the public. Again, Dr. Lucas took that question. I just want to add to what he said, that while the public is impacted, leaders are the ones with the decision-making power. And so it matters a lot what they think, what they perceive, what they see as priorities has a big impact on the decisions that are made. And that's one of the reasons why we spoke to them. Of course, there are surveys like the Gallup poll, Afrobarometer, which RIPOA takes care of in Tanzania, that does look at public perceptions, public participation, their answers to some of these questions. We're interested in comparing leader and public perceptions, and this was definitely a limited look. On the HIV/AIDS deaths averted question, I believe it's a USAID tool, correct? The Lives Saved tool, which is it's a data tool that's available online. That's what we used. A technical appendix definitely has more notes.
Yeah, I think in that question, the thing is that there have been different organizations that are supporting HIV/AIDS. If you look at the graph, the bigger share came from US, and then we have Global Fund, but not as much as the US. And as the support increased, the number of deaths went down. So that's why we are saying that it has contributed significantly than other institutions. So it's not that it's the only support that account for, but then it has the bigger share in the decrease in the number of deaths.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Dennis from Center for Foreign Relations, Dr. Salman Salim. Okay, I have two, I don't know if it's a question or it's a reaction. The first one is readership position or readership kind of, ideas. But you talk about citizen engagement, and when we go deeper on the question of citizen engagement, we mean we want to see the ownership. There's a question of empowerment and also trust. So if we remain with ideas from the readers only, I don't think it's be to yield the results that we want. The sustainability cannot be there. So I still believe that we need to listen to the people, because they have, if you move around in many places in Tanzania, for example, you hear what from the American people, USAID from the American people. So they know, they understand what is happening from the American people. So if you ask them what's the value of the American contribution, it's going to be good, and I agree with it. Secondly, it's the question of, in the past you said that Americans were funding food, and currently they're funding agriculture system. And we have an issue here, especially when it comes to food, food security, and also the control of the food production and so forth. And currently we have the question of GMO, genetically modified organism. And I do believe that we agree that American favors market. Now, is American, interested in increasing the production or making food available to the Tanzanian community? Or it is just using the land in Tanzania to produce it for the American people, for the American market? Thank you.
I'm Fundikila Wazambi, a researcher from Legal and Human Rights Center, and a beneficiary of the U.S. Exchange Program. Mine is just a simple question. I was just wondering if in this study there was a question around which areas of cooperation Tanzania would like to be a priority. Perhaps this could be food for thought for the two partners. We have had the areas health, education, defense. Now, which ones, as Tanzanians, would we like to be prioritized? That was the question that I wanted to ask. But thank you very much for a very nice presentation, and I'm looking forward to reading the report. Thank you.
Okay, the gentleman from the center.
Thank you. It's me again. My question is from the presentation itself. We are commemorating 60 years of partnership, and the title is all about partnership. And partnership is about two or more entities working together. So it's the contribution of Tanzania to that partnership and the contribution of America to that partnership. But throughout your presentation, it shows how America is contributing to that partnership. How many Tanzanians got scholarships in US, how many military men were trained in US military academies, but we don't get the other side of Americans or Tanzanians, Americans benefiting from that kind of partnership. How many Americans got trained in Tanzania military academies? How many Americans go to our universities? Or investment that Tanzania are also investing in the US market. And therefore, to make this study being two ways in that aspect of partnership, there is a need for that other party of within that partnership to show its contribution to make it legible. Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Godfrey from TPSF. Again, I would appreciate, the study is fantastic and thank you so much, but again, I would appreciate the clarification on the trade relations between the US and Tanzania. I think if I got it correctly, you're saying we're exporting more to the US than importing more to the US, but if that's correct, would you clarify that? How is that, how is it? Because the information I have is that we're importing more than exporting more, exporting to the US. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Thank you. My name is Felicia, and good work for a great presentation. I just have a question on how what is presented, like how high is high in terms of the proportion in part of a pie. So when we say, let's say, the size of investment, it's in proportion to what, as in the need or the gap. So let's say if it's an investment, like, how do I put it? So over time, we are seeing the trend and an increase, but how big is the need, or how big is the gap, and how is that really significant? So if it's, let's say, maybe it's 18% out of 100, and then we see maybe it's now it's 30% out of 100. So that will be interesting. But also in comparison to other countries who are also partnering with Tanzania, it would be interesting to see how is US doing in relation to those other countries, just to see whether the progress is significant in terms of how we see the increase on the charts. And my other question, or rather curiosity, is how I think the investment that we have seen is from what is already existing over time. So I'm interested to know, like, how do we get to understand the needs of Tanzanians in terms of the priorities, and also, you know, where we are going in terms of the economy and things like that, and whether to look at that as a need-based approach, and that would be useful to recommend in terms of prospects. So how useful is this report going to be to people who are now learning that there are these opportunities that US is investing into Tanzanian people? So how do we maximize on them? So what kind of prospects, but also what kind of people to benefit from these opportunities from a need-based perspective, but also from probably the direction of the economy of Tanzania, and mostly the people of Tanzanians, like the majority. So that's, I'm curious to know whether the report has covered that or any insights on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Kiska Masaki. I'm coming from Tanzania Agricultural Development Bank. I still have a challenge on the part of methodology. Much as I appreciate a good work which has been done and the partnership, the intervention in different economic sectors, some of them, they are easily seen, you can measure them. For instance, construction of classroom, you can see it, you can count it. But I'm curious to know, why didn't you go deep to talk to recipient of this intervention? For instance, you have done a good job in the agri sector, but you said that you interviewed the leaders who are managing funds. Now, if someone is receiving funds and manage them and channel it to, let's say, farmers or actors in the agri sector, why can't you ask that leader to tell you who are the recipients so that you can talk to them to feel the impact, if at all? Because maybe funds were received and probably they were channeled somewhere else. Let us live with. But the recipient themselves, so that they can tell you about the impact. But secondly, I agree with my colleague who wanted to know if we are really, okay, you said that the export to USA has increased. Does your report tell us the export, I mean, from which sector the export has increased? Probably if it is agri or whatever, so that the recommendation which will come from your report may tell us which area we should focus more so that we can increase more investment. I remember that there is a AGOA partnership. So how have we benefited from bilateral agreement of AGOA, and where should we put more effort so that we can tap that opportunity which has been provided by US government? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. And now I'll allow the authors to respond.
think I will start again and then leave some other questions to the rest. And maybe I should talk about this question of methodology. The big part of this study was not interview. It's really about data, secondary data collection, and then looking at the trend, then try to assess this trend from few people that we are seeing growing trend of this kind of support. What are your views on that? And then, therefore, the interview, the study was not really about interviewing people and then analysis of the interview, then conclude. The study has very small component of that area, which I can see a lot of concern to the people. That's number one. But number two, coming to the question that was raised by someone from the bank, I think you are raising a very important point about the impact to the beneficiary. Say the product, the support has gone to the agriculture sector, and then you want to see the person at the agriculture. So the question probably I should ask is whether the support from the US can monitor the use of fertilizer at the local level. I think that might be a challenge within our own, within our own system. If the support has come from US to support, say, agriculture productivity through provision of input voucher, the management of input voucher might be beyond who is supporting the project, and therefore the impact. So I think there are issues around which, our own system on how they manage the fund may matter in terms of how it happens, and that may be beyond whoever is providing that fund. I think I should stop there.
Yes, I wanted, again, to echo Dr. Lucas that that degree of in-depth monitoring and evaluation is a little bit outside of the scope of this particular set of research, but is the sort of work that we believe is desperately needed across all development sectors, whether from independent organizations like RAPOA, from the government, to be able to better track the impacts at the local level among communities, and has been, I believe, a mode of operation across research, academia, and the government that has become a bigger factor in the past few decades as we've looked to new innovative ways of leveraging data, satellites, and different measures of measuring the actual impact for the people on the ground rather than just among the leaders. But unfortunately, we weren't able to dive as much into that as we had hoped in this particular report. To a couple pieces, I can speak to some of the trade questions that came up. So I would say first, the trade data we sourced were from the UN's Comtrade system, which is not perfect by any means, but is the most comparable source that we identified for tracking imports and exports across countries and benchmarking different partners with one another. And that led us to some interesting findings. I think first, two pieces like AGOA, we really did see an uptick in textile goods and clothing immediately after AGOA was signed. And those goods were one of the, I believe, 700 goods that have duty-free access to US markets. And we can't say it's a one-to-one ratio, but we do think that the removal of import taxes on some of Tanzania's processed goods really did see a spike in imports from the US market because Americans want beautiful fabrics, t-shirts, and clothing coming from Tanzania. But also some of the other sectors that we saw, we didn't see as many, we didn't see a ton of exports from the agricultural goods outside of kind of Tanzania's traditional high value add products, coffee, chocolates, tea. Other partners, India and China, export a massive amount of grain from Tanzania, but we found that the US market is really concentrated on high value goods, and also in making sure that the development of Tanzania's agriculture kind of stays within Tanzania. Not the American investments and trade patterns more broadly aren't interested in exporting large-scale cereal crops from Tanzania as much. It's more about deepening those partnerships with farmers to build a further path towards sustainability. Yeah, and I think those are, let's see. Oh, and then to the question of measuring need, we also agree that that is a fascinating piece of benchmarking that we would have loved to include in our report, but once you get down to every sector, it requires, I think, a much bigger team and some much more creative economists than we have, even though we have a great team with us. These are some big, big questions to try to benchmark health, agriculture need across the entirety of Tanzania. Though I think with further research, we'd like to look more at connecting inputs to outcomes in very specific sectors that are kind of within the scope of a single research project like this.
I'll take a few of those too, and maybe start with the question again. It is absolutely important to listen to what the people are saying and what they want, so I'll speak to that first. Yes, speaking to leaders is a less than perfect measure, but it's kind of the bounds of what we have to work within. I would also say in a democracy, ideally, at least in principle, the leaders are supposed to be voicing the needs and giving voice to their citizens. So the hope is that when you talk to leaders, that you capture a diversity of sectors that they represent, of populations that they represent, and then we try to come to a full understanding, but fully accepting that it's less than perfect and it's what we have to work with in most cases. I think you took the question on food security and exports. And then I think this question was also from this table about the other side of the partnership, Tanzania to the US. We are researchers, and that's 100% a question we're interested in asking. The scope of this project was limited to one direction of the partnership. We would love to study the other side too. We also think that the best people to lead on that front are probably folks in this room. So we'd like to take the co-pilot seat on that study and do that piece as well, and think that that will definitely add up to the whole of the puzzle. I think my colleagues took a lot of the questions, but I just want to emphasize that where data was available, we do offer comparable numbers on different partners to Tanzania, how the US ranks against them, but really finding data that is comparable across different sectors, across different countries, across time, it's a challenge that we work with.
Okay, thank you very much. I just see here a possible collaboration between the Salim Ahmed Salim Center for Foreign Relations with Aid Data in terms of looking at how we can see Tanzania's part in the relationship between Tanzania and the United States. Another round of questions, if there are any other questions. Okay, I see Mr. Tamayamali. We'll take a few and then allow them to. This is the last round, so if you have any questions, please.
Yeah, thank you again. Thank you for authors for good clarification and whatever. I would like to know the time frame for this report. Is it from the inception of the 60 or 50 years partnership, or just this soft up? I would like to know this one. And the other thing, what's the purpose? If there is already a reported book that we're going to launch today, so what's our contribution will do? Is there any possibility of changing anything? If at all today people are coming with different ideas, are we here to acknowledge? Are we here to appreciate? Or what's our role today? I would like just to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Ahmed Linga. I'm from the Dr. Salim Ahmed Salim Center for Foreign Relations. Thank you for interesting presentation on the your report with regards to bilateralism between Tanzania and the United States. As far as I know, or as far as we know, that the USA is a pioneer in issues of good governance and rule of law. But I haven't heard any word about the report on these two areas, the rule of law and the good governance. So far as you have targeted the leaders, as you have mentioned, I think these are crucial elements of the report to hear about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments, observations?
Okay. The time period of data analysis, we're looking at essentially the last decade. The report covers 2012 to 2022 in full. Those are the last 10 years of complete data that was available across the different sectors we were interested in looking at. And where it was available, we've also included 2023, but it's substantively 10 years of analysis. You asked a question on the purpose of the report, and I think, I meant to talk, a couple of people asked this question. I think it's linked to the questions of what about the future, what sectors would Tanzania like to prioritize? I think the primary purpose that I see of this report is to provide data and evidence on what historical ties have looked like. I think it also offers a lot of clues about what the future looks like as well. I won't sit here and claim to predict what future priority sectors will be, but when you look at a trend of continuing to invest in health, when you look at the top 10 sectors that businesses invest in, you can see where the focus has been. So really the purpose is to provide that evidence base. And then on the question of good governance and law, yes, we did a rule of law. We asked a lot of those questions, didn't get into the details in the presentation, but I can give you some figures. So for example, leaders saw that in partnership with the US, about 71% of leaders said that access to public services had improved through the partnership. We asked questions on civic group participation, about media freedom, access to justice, again, getting at that rule of law question. On almost like all of these different indicators, and this graph that I'm looking at is in the report that you will get, it's above 60% of leaders saying that the partnership contributes to an improvement in each of these particular indicators. But I'll hand it to Brian.
Maybe Divya, I think you can elaborate a little bit more on leaders. Who are these leaders? Because I think it was various, there's some people who were responding.
Sure.
Who it was sent, and the survey itself.
Yeah, and I would definitely want our colleagues from RAPOA who are here on the ground speaking to them to answer this as well. So there's a separate 10-year project that AidData has been running. It's called Listening to Leaders. We cover, 142 countries. It's about 120,000 leaders who are in this sampling frame that we survey about every 3 to 4 years. And this includes leaders from government, leaders from civil society, from the media, from academia, from the private sector. I'm missing one group. But essentially, leaders from across society, talking to them about what are your development priorities, what is working in partnerships and what is not. So the 6th group was development organizations on the ground. So assessing, basically creating a report card on what development partnership looks like for them. So one of our 142 countries is Tanzania. We have this existing sampling frame. We reached out to them. We built on that sampling frame with RAPOA's help, also doing some desk research to identify folks again, from all of these different groups who have decision-making power, who have visibility on the finances. What does the partnership look like? What is the dollar value over how much time? What specifically are the programs which are being implemented? People who are able to speak to specific indicators and provide data on the questions that we had for them.
Yeah, I think Divya has explained almost everything, because those leaders, the difference is that within the country we had the same questions but face to face, but then from there they monitor them online. And of course, definitely because of the challenges of conducting survey online, there were targeted few questions for the online, but then more detailed interview when it comes to face. The leaders included the government officials in the ministries that have experiences on support from the US, but also civil society, a higher learning institution, a private sector. Yeah, those are the people who talk face to face with detailed interviews.
Yep. I guess I'll wrap up this round of answers. Just to return, I think, to the interesting question of priorities and the purpose of this report. This is primarily a historical retrospective over the last 10 years, as Divya mentioned, that we're looking back to 2012 to 2022 to see where there were changes in the US engagement with Tanzania, but also the diversity of different flows included in that engagement. That the US is not a single mode actor that has one sort of way it wants to partner with Tanzania. It's not just health, it's not just education, it's not just private sector, it's not just government, but it's the variety of all of these tools together. And there are shifts within that. In particular, we looked at some legislative mechanisms that eased trade between the US and Tanzania as potentially pivotal initiatives like Power Africa really increased the private sector investment. And looking forward, I think that that's probably an area for utility in this report, is seeing the variety of things that have worked in the past and where partners can best look to build on those for the future, or see new initiatives that they might not be the exact same as the existing initiatives in the partnership between Tanzania and the US, but are similar. For instance, I'm thinking of President Biden's infrastructure investment initiative that has the potential to unlock billions of dollars in investment in infrastructure around the world. That's a key priority of the administration moving forward. That's something the US has not particularly viewed as one of our strong suits, that the US development finance tends to go towards social sectors rather than hard infrastructure, but in, I think, a growing competition between different powers and recognizing the needs of countries to build and deepen their infrastructure, especially as we look ahead to climate challenges. The US is going to become a much bigger player in the infrastructure space. So how best can both parties leverage this new focus for the benefit of Tanzania's people and infrastructure? Yeah, I think that's, those are all my remarks, but perhaps we can save.
Dr. Mari, you had something to say?
I just wanted to add on the issue of the purpose of this study, and I think many of you here in the room have attended a number of events involving other embassies commemorating years of cooperation, and here you will hear ambassadors giving statistics on how the countries have contributed to the development, working in partnership with various organizations. But I think what this study has done was a decision, of course, of the U.S. government to try to make a self-reflection. We have been here for many years. If we look back, what have we done? And the only way to do that would have an independent assessment to try to collect data And I think because of the timing issue of availability of data, 10 years was a reasonable time period to do. It's always good practice to do that, to document, and to try to make that information public. And that's where you can actually obtain feedback from the public through the reports, but also through the discussions, dissemination events like this about how the contribution has meant to the people of Tanzania, and perhaps to signal where we would expect you as the partner to invest more. And I think there are people here in the room, especially Professor David Nyange, who has worked with the USAID and embassy for a long time. He will be on the panel. I think he'll get the time to speak more about the validity and the importance of a practice like this. And for me, I would encourage also other partners for Tanzania to do this, so that we documented this experience and put it in the public domain, so that people can appreciate and understand the partnership, but also it gives them the opportunity to provide views and recommendations, because they already have the data, the basis of which can help them to influence the future direction. I think that is, I would say, the purpose, and I think it's best practice that others should also emulate. I think, Professor Nyange, if you want to say something now, or during the panel, but I think we could say something.
Yeah, maybe add something on the scope of the study, that this study is looking at macro level, just giving a snapshot of the partnership that has been existing. But as you understand, the development programs are implemented through programs and projects. So there are many assessments that have been done already, looking at the, through project evaluations and impact assessment. Maybe I just mention one, especially on the health side or health sector, is the Demographic and Health Survey, which is a national sample survey implemented by the National Bureau of Statistics with the support from the US government and the other partners. That provides more detailed results, outcomes, and even impacts of the interventions. For example, one of the findings of the recent DHS is the decrease in the prevalence of HIV/AIDS in Tanzania. From the peak, 7% in the past, to the recent survey, which is around 4.4%. So that's an impact. It also looks at many other aspects, including the nutrition status and how these programs have contributed really to the improvement of health in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mari and Professor Nyange, for kind of elaborating further. I believe even within us, there are some people who received some of these surveys from aid data. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe even from the Center for Foreign Relations, you might have some colleagues who are actually part of the sampling frame. So with that, let's thank our authors, and we thank you, the audience, for your questions. We will be taking a 15-minute break. We've taken a little bit more time, but we're good with time. We'll take a 15-minute break, and we can reconvene at, let's say, 11:10, ready for the panel.
Good morning, colleagues. And let me start with congratulating the authors of the main report, which is the subject of discussion today. That is aid data colleagues and the report colleagues for the wonderful work which you have done. And let me also congratulate the hosts of our meeting this morning, that is the report and I think aid data. Those are the hosts of our meeting today. We have 4 panelists for our discussion, and let me introduce the panelists, and they will also introduce themselves very briefly. First of all, my name is Ahmed from Repoa. I'm a research fellow there. visiting research fellow. The first panelist is Professor Nyange from Aspire. Please, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Okay, thank you very much, Ahmed. As I've been introduced, my name is David Nyange. Currently, I'm a chief of part for Feed the Future Serabora project, which is implemented by Michigan State University and Aspire's NGO here in Tanzania. I know some of you know me very well, as previously I used to teach at the Sokoine University of Agriculture for over 15 years. And then I joined USID, worked with them for 7 years before I moved to MSU. I'm an ag economist, and I've been in this sector here in Tanzania for many years.
Oh, thank you very much, Professor Nyange. The second panelist is Geoffrey Mondi.
Thank you, Doc. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Godfrey Mondi. I'm representing the CEO of the Tanzania Private Sector Foundation, Mr. Rafael Maganga. He would wanted to be here, but due to other high-level engagement, he's unable to join us in person. I work for Tanzania Private Sector Foundation as a senior policy analyst for trade, investment, and economic diplomacy. Yeah, this subject is when you talk about the U.S. and Tanzania relations, it's something that falls directly under my docket, my portfolio, but also U.S. is a country of my interest. So I'm looking forward to an interesting discussions today. Thank you.
Yeah, the next panelist is Makumba Mwemezi. Please introduce yourself.
This works. Good morning. My name is Makumba Mwemezi. I work with Hakelim, just like Godfrey. I also represent Dr. John Karage, our executive director, who was also very eager to be here, but unfortunately, he has other matters to attend. So I'm here on behalf of him, and I'll be on the panel. I'm a researcher and a lawyer, and also head the Department of Research, Innovation, and Policy Analysis at Hakelim. I have over 10 years experience with the CSOs, so I could talk a little bit about the partnership between the US and the non-government organization. And yeah, I'm a policy analyst, so glad to be in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our last panelist is our honorable lady here, Rehema Kilonzo.
Good morning. I hope I'm the last but not least. My name is Rehema Kilonzo, as I'm introduced, and I work with the University of Dodoma as a lecturer. I'm a senior lecturer, but also as a researcher. I am one of the beneficiaries of the US scholarship. I did my PhD at the University of Minnesota in the United States, and I had a MacArthur scholarship and also Peace Compton scholarship. And I've been heading the Directorate of Internationalization at the University of Dodoma for the past 3 years, up until last year. And so I also know collaborations that is happening between the University of Dodoma and the other universities in the US, and also have also participated in the partnership between the University of Dodoma and the Ohio State University. And I'll be also discussing on the education or academia, if I would say so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We go to the first panelist, and that is Ms. Professor Nyange. The U.S. government has been engaged in Tanzania since 1961, beginning with the historical meeting between the late Mwalimu Nyerere and the President J.F. Kennedy, also a late one. Also, one of the initial projects which was agreed upon initially between the two parties was focused on agriculture, and the report was quite clear on that one. And that project led to the establishment of
the Sokoine University of Agriculture, which is based in Morogoro. Now, Professor Nyange, I have two key questions, which you should respond to. One is, can you provide specific success stories of how the U.S. engagement, both governmental and non-governmental, has contributed to the growth and the development of agriculture sector in Tanzania, by also looking at how this support changed over time, and if it changed over time, why did it change? The second question is, in which areas has this engagement been less successful, and why? Why has it been less successful, and why? In that relationship, what potential improvements could be made to enhance this particular impact of the U.S. support to agriculture? You are most welcome. You have 10 minutes to answer the two questions, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Ahmed. As you have rightly put it, one of the first big projects of the partnership between the American people and the Tanzanian people were two projects. One is the establishment of the Morogoro Agriculture College, which later became the Sokoine University of Agriculture. Of course, the other project is the construction of the Tanzania-Zambia Road, Tanzam, and that's even before the Tazara Railway was built. So these were big projects in the 60s that were supported by the American people. And later on, of course, the Morogoro Agriculture College was transformed into a full-fledged university as Sokoine University of Agriculture. Even though I was not there during this establishment of this project, but you could see clearly that this project was based on the experiences of development from various countries, where we see nations investing in human resource in terms of health and education. So the US government saw an opportunity to support Tanzania in this area of developing human resources, especially in the agricultural sector, which was the predominant sector in the country, employing the majority of population, but also ensuring food security. The partnership did not stop there after establishment of the university, but has continued over years up to this year with various projects, and I can only mention a few of them. One was the partnership between Sokoine University, Tanzanian Agricultural and Livestock Research Center with US land grant universities. Under Feed the Future program, there was a project known as IAGRI, which was a collaborative research in agriculture, in which 7 US land grant universities were involved, including Ohio State University, Michigan State University, Virginia Polytechnic, Tuskegee University, University of Florida, and others. Under this program, US government provided 145 graduate scholarships in master's and PhD in various fields of agriculture. In addition to overseas training, this program also helped to restructure Sokoine University in order to enhance its efficiency in delivery of education. Through this program, the university was able to develop a strategic program which led to the centralization of the university. And as the result, currently you have different schools and institutes which are operating more efficiently compared with the previous organizational structure. That partnership continues also on the private sector side, where, for example, through Sokoine University NGO that is supporting graduate university students known as Sugeko, as currently being able to send over, over 200 graduates to the US and attach them to various Yes, and attach them into various agribusinesses for apprenticeship, to make sure that they are able to learn and get experience in management of agribusiness. In addition to that, the US government has been supporting Tanzania through international research centers such as popularly known as include ITA, Institute of Tropical Agriculture. You have CIMIT focusing on cereals. You have focusing on livestock. So Tanzania has benefited immensely from that. Another success story is the horticulture sector. Since 2006, through USAID and United States Department of Agriculture, US government has been supporting the horticulture industry in Tanzania, especially in partnership with the Tanzania Horticulture Association. Before this project started, horticulture was considered as a minor subsector within agriculture. Now, horticulture sector is the fastest growing subsector in the agriculture. It provides employment to over 2 million Tanzanians. Export earnings have exceeded over $700 million a year. And it's having an impact in many ways in terms of jobs creation for youth, but also in improving the nutrition of Tanzanians. As you could see over years, Tanzania's nutrition, especially for children, has been improving. Besides that, there have been heavy investment in rural infrastructure. In the 90s and the latest under Feed the Future program in 2000s, there have been 2 large rural road programs. These have constructed thousands of kilometers of rural roads in southern highlands and in central Tanzania. These are the breadbasket regions of Tanzania. They've helped to renovate rural roads, built bridges, and helping to reduce transport costs, which is a major constraint for farmers' access to farm inputs and markets in Tanzania. USAID has been one of the champions for the Southern Agricultural Growth Corridor partnership, which has really helped to catalyze public and the private sector investment in that corridor. One of the major infrastructure projects there is the Kidatu-Ifakara Road, which currently is being upgraded to tarmac level. USAID is part of that partnership, working with EU and UK to improve infrastructure that area that will help farmers to access markets. That's an important area, especially for the sugar industry, but also for the rice value chain. I can say there are a lot of work that has been done, especially when it comes to policy reforms. One of the projects I'm leading is really focusing on that, helping to create enabling environment in agriculture in Tanzania. And through various projects, we have been able to achieve over 10 legal, regulatory, and institutional reforms, which has really helped to catalyze investment in the sector. As you heard this morning, there have been increased investment in the agricultural sector, increased the lending, despite some of the challenges, but we see even the sector transforming with the rise of medium-scale farmers. So all this really ushers, a transformation into the sector. Maybe I should stop there, maybe go to the next question about probably what needs to be done better, or maybe what are the new opportunities for the US government. One area which I see very much is on we call development finance. As you heard this morning, there's development assistance and development finance. Development assistance comes usually in form of technical support, while development finance is mainly intended to support investment infrastructure, but also supporting the private sector. Development finance comes usually in form of, I would say, concessional loans. These are long-term, low-interest loans, but also in terms of actual investment. I see this as an opportunity. As you know, Tanzania has moved into lower medium income country, together with several countries in the region, and that has really increased the demand for private sector financing. The private sector is still at its juvenile stage, where it cannot survive with the commercial loans. And as you could see, there have been increased non-performing loans in the agricultural sector in Tanzania. So that needs concessional financing, and the development finance is an opportunity here. Thanks to the establishment of DFC, Development Financing Corporation, and I see an opportunity here for increased investment to support the private sector. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Nyange, for that elaborate explanation of the support which has been provided by the U.S. government and the other institutions in the U.S. for the benefit of the Tanzanian community. As such, colleagues, you keep your questions, because what they are discussing here is quite extensive and quite interesting. So, yeah, we would like to encourage you, after they have all spoken, we will have a session which we will exchange questions and the issues and the answers and so forth and the recommendations. Before we go to the next speaker, I think we have a problem with the electricity or with the system and so forth. Yeah. I see colleagues from the U.S. Embassy, they are here. Can I invite you, after every speaker, you make an input into that discussion?
And I think this should be an inclusive dialogue. I encourage participants to ask questions about the research that was conducted and to lean on the expertise that's presented here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we go to our next panelist. That is Rehema from the University of Dodoma, and she will be speaking on issues related with the academics. Before she starts speaking, let me guide her to the direction of her intervention. Since the early years of Tanzania independence, the U.S. has supported the development of Tanzania human capital by offering scholarships for various educational programs, including doctorates, masters, bachelors, and certificate courses, along with the other forms of technical assistance. Also, you remember our first panelist also mentioned about the scholarships and the education system, which was put forward, especially to support the agriculture. Now for the academicians, based on your experience, madam, what has been the most impactful aspect of the U.S.-Tanzania partnership in terms of education, restrictions for study and work-related visas, and the technology transfers? The second question related to that would be, has the partnership changed over time? And how has that partnership changed and why? Please, you are most welcome. You have 10 minutes for your intervention.
Thank you, Ahmad. Based on my experience and on the reports from the research that was presented before us just previously, the more than 1,000 Tanzanians, as from the reports, receive different scholarships to go to study to the U.S. annually. And that is one of the benefits from the last decade. But also, in terms of the impact in terms of this this relationship or partnership in as far as academia or is concerned, also the trained, differently trained personnels who got scholarship to the US comes back to the country. One example is myself, who actually teach or work in different areas in academia, in research, in government and civil society institutions, which is part of, you know, development in bringing development in Tanzania. So that is part of the impact that they make in terms of receiving education and coming back. But also, in terms of restrictions, yes, there are visa restrictions and work-related restrictions when one have to work in the US or to travel to the US for work or for academia. For training, the restriction is not that much because you have all the documents, then you have a visa. But for work, there are some restrictions, and the restrictions has even increased recently because more people need to get education there. But in terms of the partnership, has the partnership changed over time? In terms of academia, yes, it has changed. Previously, one would, the scholarship will come through the government and then people would apply and go. Currently, you have to compete. And why is this? It is because there are more people who eager to go. So, and also some scholarship currently comes through research and project. So it's not directly, but in terms of research that academia and research institutions, right, they have to compete for research funding first, and those research funding in most cases comes with opportunities in terms of trainings and skills. But in terms of technology transfers, also from the report we read that there are skill trainings. So our people get opportunities to go to the US for different skill trainings. These are not degrees or diplomas, but short-term trainings, and part of this is the military, but also there is exchange, Fulbright scholarship exchange programs where Tanzanians get the opportunity to go to teach or to work for a certain period of time in the US, but also the US scholars also get opportunity to come to Tanzania to work. So part of the skills that they have or technology that they have comes this way. Thank you. I think
Yeah, okay, thank you. The second question was how has this partnership changed over time, if it has changed? Look at your overall period since 1961 to the current state, whether it has been a consistent improvement or there have been some stumbling blocks, and if you have some reasons which you could put forward, please, you are welcome, before we move on to the next speaker. I
think I mentioned that it has changed. Well, when we look on the scholarship, how do one acquire scholarship to go and do their masters or their PhDs in the US? It has changed because now it is competition. It doesn't come direct, so it is competition. There is a call and one has to compete to get that scholarship. So it has changed over time, and the reason, one of the reason could be the more people are, the population has increased for people who need education compared to previously. So that is one of the reasons. So there, and another reason is the US government has decreased the resources on this. So it's not a free ride, as they will always say, but you have to do something to get that scholarship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rehema, for that input. Now we move to the next panelist, and that is Geoffrey Mondi. Yes, Geoffrey Mondi. Geoffrey Mondi is from the private sector, and he will be speaking on behalf of the private sector in Tanzania and the private sector partners in the US. Before you start, we recall that the US government assistance or the development aid from the US, including the government and the private sector contributions via trade, tourism, investment, philanthropy, and the remittances has been essential to the Tanzanian private sector growth. This was evident in the report earlier, which we saw before, and now it is subject for your discussion. Now I have two questions for you to be able to elaborate in front of our colleagues. First question, in your view, what roles do you see the US government and the private sector, including companies, organizations, and the foundations, playing in supporting the growth of Tanzania private sector? In that relationship, how has these roles evolved over time? That's question number one. Number two, what types of activities does the US most often support in Tanzania's private sector, and how do they provide this support? And in that relationship also, has this approach changed over time? And if so, why do you think so? Please, you are most welcome.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Those are very long questions and also demands a bit of data to justify some of these questions. But yes, roles of the US G assistance, companies and philanthropists in supporting private sector growth in Tanzania. I must declare that TPSF, we sit in the US-Tanzania Commercial Dialogue, and personally I'm secretary of the Access to Market Working Group. So basically I want to promote more trade and investment relation between the US and Tanzania. There's so much that is happening currently. In terms of government and private sector support to private sector development in Tanzania, we have seen the report, and I may not really need to recite the numbers. 1.8 billion annually in terms of person-to-person transactions. That's a lot annually in terms of supporting private sector growth in Tanzania. But remittance is around $300 million again annually. Again, it's a proportionate amount that also is very important in transforming the economy. Allow me to say the other way around, that there is an influence in terms of perceptions when you have US-based or US-owned investment in your country. If you're hosting US-owned companies in a country, there's influence globally. For example, if I mention you have Coca-Cola and Pepsi in the country, and the other large capital-intensive investments, it sends a signal to other potential investors outside there that Tanzania or this country is good for investment. So with that, we have seen growth in terms of investment from other countries and positive consideration in that. We have projects with the USG assistance. It's through programs. For example, within TPSF and also through our members in terms of sector associations. We have seen, for example, Women Chamber of Commerce implementing a project on private sector strength and activity. It used to be activity, now it's a project. And they capacitated a sizable number of youth in the Southern Highlands in the agricultural value chain. And so far, recent reports, we are seeing these young men and women now bringing their goods, not just selling their goods, not just in Iringa, but also bringing them up to somewhere in Dar es Salaam. So we appreciate such kind of a support, and that's been transformational to ensure there is inclusive and sustainable investment in Tanzania. From TPSF as well, we are beneficiaries of one of the program, or two. There's a US Protect project that was implemented somewhere around early 2019-2020 on conservation sustainable investment. But again, there's USAID to hifadhi maliasili, conserve nature, conserve natural, to hifadhi maliasili. That's again, we are part of that. And now we are promoting sustainable private sector investments in the areas of connectivity, kwa Kiswahili maeneo ya shoroba, and also train capacity in private sector to engage in combating wildlife trafficking. That again, understanding that tourism in Tanzania is more than 90% nature-based. So it's a very critical project in terms of promoting sustainability in the tourism sector. You look at, you have highly trafficked wildlife such as the elephants. We have the Maasai zebra and giraffe. So this intervention has capacitated a number of somewhere around 610 private sector actors in both Dar es Salaam, Tanga, Manyara, Mbeya, and in Tanga. So it's a very important support, and we truly appreciate the support from USG and US-based philanthropists. On the other side, we have seen growing investment in the energy sector, and I want to highlight its importance. It may not be not just for money, but electricity production is very critical to supporting manufacturing industry in Tanzania. There is a recent study that was done that indicates constant blackouts contribute somewhere around 30 to 40% of production cost in Tanzania if one turns to fuel-powered generators. So the investment in the Kinyerezi and similar projects to support electricity and ensure that there is energy security in Tanzania is very critical, directly and indirectly, to the private sector development in Tanzania. Then again, you have tourism that plays a critical role. But exports to the US, those mentioned in the report, and I must emphasize, they mentioned the reports covers 10 years. If you take the AGOA data from 2012, export to the US through the AGOA, leave aside the GSP, through the AGOA, in the textile, it was somewhere around $10.9 million. 2022, $75 million. I mean, it's a significant growth in 10 years. That's specifically for AGOA, not GSP. If you plus GSP, somewhere around 440 million exports. So it's an important market. And yes, there was a question about which sectors. You have the textile and garment. And why is this? Let me explain, perhaps for the interest of those who are. It's a sector that it's easy to start with. Globally, you have countries that have undergone significant industrial manufacturing. They began with the textile because it's easy. You import a fabric, you convert it into something wearable, you export it, and it qualifies to get to international market, becomes made in Tanzania. Yes, I'm told time is of essence. I will just again go to capacity building as I'm closing. I've received some capacity building, technical assistance through US and US-based, USGs and US-based philanthropists to our private sector. We work with AmCham closely. AmCham is a TPSF member. But again, I was told, I was young then, I'm sure, TPSF was established, the initial establishment of TPSF was through USAID support. So we had the creation at some point of the US support back in 1998 and early 2000. By then I was too young, I cannot mention my age. Yes, allow me now to end here, but one thing, we have one of the beneficiaries from the US universities. We have seen Nala Mani, founded by Benji Fernandez. He's a graduate from the US-based universities and is now making some headlines in East Africa and transforming remittance transfers to Africa and from the West. Allow me perhaps to end here. I know there's part B of the questions, but I hope I will have time to respond to the involvement of the US support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Godfrey, for that extensive elaboration of US support to the private sector in Tanzania. I believe the other colleagues from the private sector would also give us some additional examples which could be a building block for the future collaboration between the two partners. Now we go to the fourth and the last panelist. That is Mr. Mwemezi from the civil society organizations. Before you start your intervention, Mr. Mwemezi, let's look at some collective effort. The US government and the non-governmental actors have been effective pioneers providing technical and financial assistance to enhance democracy and the governance through legal and the policy reforms, as well as promoting gender equality and the empowerment of women and the children. Okay, now the two questions. How has the US government and the non-governmental actors in the US contributed to support CSOs, NGOs operations in Tanzania? In that relationship, has this support changed over time? The second question, what aspects could you suggest in improving the US-Tanzania partnership growth in the future for supporting the civil society organizations, and why? You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you. As I was listening to my fellow panelists here and reading from the report itself, I don't think there's much left to talk about on the importance of the role of the US in Tanzania, both in sectors that cut across from civil societies, private sector, and what have you. But 3 years back, we from the civil society organizations, some members of the civil society organization are here, may echo what I'm talking about. As the director put it, the report is important. It's a sign of reflection. And we went through the same process 3 years back of we as members of the civil society organization reflecting on our contribution to the government of Tanzania in terms of financial contribution, whatever, employment and all those stuff. Not because the government didn't know what we were contributing. They actually regulate everything that we are doing, the financial flows that we are bringing in as member of the civil society organization. But somewhere, at some point, we had to prove to them that, well, don't attack this civil society organization too much because we are your allies in this process of development by the time of the late Magufuli. So we had to go through the same process, writing the report like this, sending to the government, actually sending things and telling the narrative that they already know because we file the annual returns and all stuff. But I agree, it's the important process. One, because we document, but again, it gives time to reflect. And on that note, I will not dwell into the contribution or the role that the US has played to the civil society organization, but rather I'll focus my efforts in terms of what we can improve. Because yes, immense support civil societies have received. And the contributions cannot be overemphasized. So I'll focus on the areas that we want to improve rather. I'll now let them in two aspects. One, in terms of the approach that they are taking. I understand most of the support that you have had here, whether it's in the health sector, education sector, mostly through a partnership between the US with the government and INGO, international organizations. My fellow, even before I was coming here, I spoke to some of the few national and local organizations and asked them, well, have you ever received support from the USAID? What role does, whatever, those kind of questions. But at least those 5 or so which I asked them, they said, no. Because the approach that you guys have been taking is through the international. We are not saying that's bad, but we think the local organizations, the national organizations, NGOs have a very strong presence in the community where your work may be held. And that's why you're asking yourself the question here. If you read the introduction of this report to tell you, well, we've been doing this for 60 years, but like people in Tanzania and people in America don't know what we're doing. And we are suggesting that at least work with local organizations which have strong presence in the grassroots where the communities are. I had some questions from some of the members of the meeting here asking, have you interviewed the community, the beneficiaries themselves? And the answers were, well, we went to the leaders and so. But working with this local organization would have given you the answer and the feedback that you're looking at the angle of those beneficiaries. And I think that's the area also I would suggest to be improved. And I know throughout the times there have been calls for proposals that also invite whatever, national or local organization to apply. But again, in terms of the process on how to access US fund, to these local organizations have been a little bit complicated, and I hope I can speak on behalf of some and many civil societies organizations. And it's the area that we will also suggest need to improve. If not to lessen a bit in terms of your conditions and requirements, I don't know, sometimes we, from my organization, we have applied for several, and well, unfortunately we didn't get them. Maybe we didn't write good proposals. But we also asked our colleagues who we know that have big impacts in vocal CSOs. They also didn't get them. And we're asking, who are you working with in terms of the local organizations? I think that will bring in and bring your impact and at least answer that question of your presence in terms of those beneficiaries. So that's the area that which I wanted to point. But again, in terms of areas that brings more impact, of course you have highlighted in areas that you're working in, especially in education, for example, touching on primary education through the program that you have highlighted. But we think you have a chance also to come to areas that have very high impact, and that's a concerns of the society. For example, we're talking about primary education, and we have reached about 3,000 schools, while we have over 20,000 schools. We have impacted like 1.5 million students. We have over 20 million students in primary schools, but we have also have a very challenging situation in secondary schools, where about 60% of, yes, 2 minutes. Okay. Where about 60% of secondary school graduates are dropping, getting division 0 and 4, and so do not get the chance to go through the universities where the benefits were highlighted here. But also, if you go to higher education itself, what are the concerns with of the students? Well, scholarship, 1,000 scholarship, yeah, there are something, but the concerns of the students could be in another direction which you are not you're not touching. I think if you go down the direction, the impact will be felt, and we will not be struggling using these reports to say, well, what have we done? What you have done will be echoed and reflected from the beneficiaries themselves if you touch the areas that being direct to those beneficiaries. See the moderator. Well, I'll come back to finish what I've started. Thank you.
Thank you, Mwemezi, for that extensive presentation, which marks some differences from what we heard before. I think what you have mentioned needs some sort of reflections, not necessarily by the report writers, but also by the authorities. Authorities of the two partners, that Tanzania and also the United States. one thing which I may reflect a little bit here is that the report, if I caught it quite correctly, points out to 22 private sector foundations from the US supporting different sectors in Tanzania. Now the question is, have those not been able to become effective supporters of the private sector and also the civil society organizations in Tanzania, or there is a need to sharpen and enhance that support? Possibly we will address these questions as we move forward. Now, before we open the floor to the public, we still have 10 minutes for these guys here to reflect on one key question. That is a cross-cutting follow-up question. And the question comes as follows. Compared to other emerging and competing foreign partners or powers, how is the US best and least positioned to support Tanzania's growth and development? In your opinion, do you think the US is still influential in contributing to the country's growth and development in a relation to other developing partners such as the Scandinavian countries, China, India, etc., etc., etc.? So here we have a comparative analysis, a very brief comparative analysis, whereby we see the significance of the US and in relation to other Tanzania's development partners. My colleagues, let's start with the Godfrey. Godfrey, you have 2 minutes, please, to answer that question, comparative question.
Thank you, Doctor. One, the US is still positioned, from a private sector point of view, the US is still positioned as the best partner to influence private sector development and economic growth for 2 reasons. Number one, it is still command strong influence globally in terms of the economy and economic policies. We have emerging players in the industry, but yes, the US, the demand for low value added products in the US is not there. So indirectly, it pushes countries like us to invest in the manufacturing sector where you get better margins than exporting non-value added products to other players. Yes, we're exporting. Trade with Asia and other players has been growing, but growing in terms of low value added and non-value added actors. But secondly, on the other side of the discussions, that with the growing and evolving stringent standards and policies that I imagine the US and perhaps other players, I would include the European Union, yes, private sector responds to incentives, and so we're now switching to other players where the policies are easy to comply and also to trade with. So if those 2 areas, on the positive side, we're going to take it. If the other side, they also need the US perhaps to reconsider in terms of policies, making them less stringent in terms of, yes. So I'll stop there, and then the 2 minutes are not enough to clearly clarify this, but yes.
Thank you very much, Godfrey, on that one. Value addition. It will push the Tanzanian economy and growth into a different perspective rather than to sell cheaper products. Okay, that's very good. Professor Nyange, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. The way I see is that the landscape is quite big, to accommodate many players. It's up to Tanzanians to choose where they get best value for assistance. I'm convinced that, given the US government experience in supporting development in various countries and its ability to bring best practices into the countries that they assist, I think there's a lot of value that comes with it. But this morning we also talked about the various resources which are being brought together, looking at development assistance. development finance, looking at trade, looking at FDI, looking at remittance of Tanzanians diaspora, in the US, looking at tourism, where in fact per capita expenditure by American tourists is the highest, despite the number also. But also looking at the private sector-led approach that's packaged into that assistance. But also looking at infrastructure financing, looking, for example, MCC. Usually infrastructure is funded through concessional financing, through loans. But MCC, in fact, is a grant. The previous program, which was slightly under $700 million, funded key infrastructure in the country. I can highlight a few. For example, for the first time, Tunduma-Sumbawanga Road was built at tarmac level. This is a key road that they connect the major agricultural sector in the country with the rest of the country, with neighboring countries. Part of the Mtwara corridor, Tanga Horohoro Road, connecting Tanzania with its neighbors in East Africa. Some roads in Zanzibar and Pemba. Looking at the national grid, if you travel from Iringa all the way to Lake Zone, there are 3 power grids. One of them was funded through MCC program. The undersea cable of electricity to Zanzibar. Looking at Mafia Airport. Some of the urban water supply projects in Dar es Salaam and Morogoro. All these were funded through MCC, through a grant, take and go. But what is most important is the technical support and the capacity building that comes with it. Before implementation of MCC Compact, there was support to TRA so as to enhance efficiency in resource mobilization, the accountability agencies like PPRA, Public Procurement Regulatory Authority, CAG, Controller and Audit General, anti-corruption through TAKUKURU. All these were supported technically, but also in terms of development of the systems, which ensures the sustainability. So for me, I see this as if you look at the quality of aid, probably this is the best choice, but as Tanzanians have the choice to choose. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Nyange. Now, my colleague, you have heard the very positive aspects vis-a-vis the United States and also compared it to other potential partners. Dr. Rehema, what is your view going forward?
Thank you. I think looking on the academia, the training and skills, the U.S. is still stand on the upper hand. When we look at, for example, in the health sector, the Mkapa Fellows program, which is aiming at enhancing labor force in a health sector, we see the support from the U.S. there, and the percentages are high. But also, when we look on the other countries, for example, I'll take an example of China, Chinese, for example, that are establishing Confucius institutes in some of our universities in the country, teaching Chinese language and culture only. So it is they are competitive, but only dealing with the language and culture when comparing to the US that is catering in almost all sectors, all areas of education. And also when you look on the types of students or Tanzanians who are trained annually in the US or in the labor force, Tanzanian who are working in the US, as mentioned in the remittance coming back to Tanzania. As a result of that, the US is also standing on the upper hand. So as others said, is up to the two countries to decide how best the two countries can do in actually making this partnership sustainable in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rehema. On that one, you are joining the club of positive thinkers in this particular case. Okay, now the last speaker, Mwemezi. What do you think the U.S. can make more contribution to Tanzania's CSOs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'll stick to the point that I've been trying to make. Yes, the U.S. is still influential, and especially as a giant ally to the government, and also, of course, we as oversight bodies, as civil societies, oversight bodies, we need the U.S. to be on our part, especially these local organizations that are trying to oversee what the government is doing. Someone asked, I think, the question of, well, we might be looking on the money that are coming in, but the impact, are there no misappropriation somewhere? You have read the CAG report somewhat, and you can see how the money are there, but in terms of the efficiency, if we inquire, you might find some findings which are astonishing, and that's the area that we need to tell the government that we as civil societies are with the U.S. and other allies to look into you to ensure that efficient that you're looking at. I think that's the area that I'll call upon the U.S. to continue working on, to improve or expand working on the local civil society organization, because they have this foot on the ground and direct talking to the beneficiary that may tell your story more aloud on top of what we are doing here. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mwemezi. And on behalf of my colleagues here, let us give them the vote of thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, before we open the floor to the colleagues on the other side to ask a question to the panelists, you remember there was a movie which was supposed to be shown at the beginning of the panel discussions, and the system couldn't work, but now I've been advised that the system is now functioning well. Can we start that movie? The movie supports the discussions which we have been having here, particularly the agriculture sector, the U.S. investments in Tanzania's agriculture sector, the empowering of farmers, and it's a very short movie, apparently, but it's very effective. Please, go ahead.
This is the short video that we were going to show earlier, the Dakawa irrigation scheme.
Ushirika huu wa wakuda au wakulima wadogo kilimo cha umwagiliaji mpunga Dakawa ulianza baada ya baraza la mawaziri ambalo walikaa mwaka 2003 na kusema kwamba mashamba ambayo yalikuwa chini ya NAFCO yabinafsishwe, yapewe wakulima wadogo. Hadi sasa hivi ninavyoongea, ushirika huu una wanachama 918.
Hapo mwanzoni kulikuwa kuna changamoto nyingi. Kuna kipindi ilikuwa ndani ya wiki nzima au wiki mbili uhangaikie kupata maji kwa sababu mifereji yetu ilikuwa sio mizuri.
Ukweli ni kwamba tulikuwa tunamvuna mpunga kwa mikono. Athari zilizokuwepo, unapata losi wewe mkulima. Kwa tulikuwa tuna changamoto kubwa, lakini mwaka 2012 tulienda Moshi kupata mafunzo ya kilimo bora cha mpunga KTC. Tumefundishwa kwa wiki 2. Tukafundishwa kupanda kwanza, kuandaa mbegu, kuandaa mashamba, tukafundishwa kilimo bora kwa ujumla.
Baada ya kupata knowledge kutoka USAID Feed the Future, nilianza kuvuna magunia 37 kwa ekari. Miaka ya nyuma nilivuna gunia 5, 8 hadi 10 kwa ekari. Nikivuna gunia 10 nilifanya pati kwamba nimevuna sana. USAID Feed the Future walitusaidia kututafutia benki ili tuweze kukopa. Wale wanaoweza kukopa wana collateral ambazo ni nyumba, lakini wengi wao wamepangisha. Sasa basi imekuja sasa mfumo wa stakabadhi ghalani. Mfumo wa stakabadhi ghalani ni kitu kizuri sana kwetu sisi wakulima wa skimu hii. Pale utakapotunza ule mpunga wako ndani ya ile godown, itakuwa tayari ni collateral yako.
Stakabadhi mazao ghalani ni mfumo ambao mkulima analeta mazao yake hapa, anaenda benki, anapewa fedha kulingana na mazao yake yakiwa ghalani. Bei ikipanda, anauza mazao yake, anarudisha ile fedha benki.
Kwa upande wa wenzetu wakulima, fursa zimeongezeka. Kama hivyo wameletewa mashine za kuvunia, matrekta wameongezewa. Kwa sisi wafanyabiashara, miundombinu imekuwa mizuri.
USAID wameweza kutusaidia kuturekebishia miundombinu. Mpaka sasa nikihitaji maji leo nayapata leo hii.
Matrekta yamesaidia sana. Kwa umbali ni masaa tu ili shamba limeisha. Hata kule kukata tamaa kwamba mkulima hana faida. Tumeona sasa kilimo kina faida. Tunalala pazuri, tunavaa vizuri, hatuna shida. Jamani, sikupendeza au? Hatulili njaa, tunakula chakula cha kutosha na watoto wako shule.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Now, on the basis of the positive notes, can we open the floor for the public? We have only 20 minutes. Questions for the panelists to be able to respond to you. Colleagues with the issues, with the proposals, with the recommendations. Dion who has a... okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Manti. I'm also coming from the NGO. So probably I will focus on the NGO and deliver other things because of the time. I was having other questions, but I think allow me to focus on NGO and the support which we have been receiving from United States. Yeah, I think we have to acknowledge the support. We have to be appreciative for the support which has been provided to the civil society or NGO. As I wanted to echo the good message which has been provided by the person who was actually representing the NGO. If you look at the focus of US, especially USAID and all that, there has been really intention to support localization agenda for the NGO and all that. But while that is there, it is within their philosophy. If you look at the condition which has been set when we are accessing, we are trying really to access the support at the local organization, you will find that they are actually very, very complicated for the local organization. You know, for instance, you know, there is a lot of conditions that which these local organization has supposed really to go through, which are not actually in line with the local organization. That's why if there is a room for international organization to compete, definitely the local organization will not get that. I had an opportunity to interact with someone from USAID very recently, and we discussed about this issue that yes, you are pushing for you are supporting localization, but when I look at your system, you know, the kind of condition which you are putting, it is actually not in line with the local organization, and sometimes even the amount which you are supposed to apply for could be beyond what the local organization can actually afford. For instance, you will be told if you wanted to apply this, then you should be able to get, let's say, 30 million USAID. For most of the local organization, really they don't have that capacity to absorb that. But when you ask the people from USAID, they will tell you that, you know, for us, we will be having we need a lot of manpower really to do that. So for me, my humble request is, could you, as you are supporting, you have intention of supporting local organization, soften your condition so that it can actually be in line with the local organization. I think that will be my humble request to the process.
Okay, thank you very much, Moss. Another question, please be short. There is a lady behind there. Be short in your questions. We only have 1 minute or so for a question. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Antesh Melaisho, and I work for Twaweza East Africa. So my question is, I've seen that you make a very great contribution in terms of the agricultural sector, but then there's data that shows that in comparison to, say, 2000 to the 2020s, there's been some sort of decrease in terms of a shift from our exports. We're now exporting more minerals than agriculture products, and there's also a shift in terms of who we're exporting it to. The large amount of our exports is going towards Asian countries and the UAE, and less to the US. So I was wondering how, this information or how you've engaged with this form of data, whether the engagement that you're making is not really contributing so much into the agriculture sector, and that's why there's a plummeting of that sector in terms of our exports and how we're doing. My other question is in terms of the appetite for adaptability. I understand that it hasn't always been smooth, the engagement with Tanzania and everything. There's been sort of projects that have sort of been stopped because of, a failure of some sort of aspects. How do you find, say, other opportunities, say, where you're just mainly or solely planning to work with government? How is your flexibility in terms of moving towards opportunities, say, to the civil society engagement, say, for some projects that you're mainly supposed to work with government, and maybe government is not that receptive? How adaptable are you in terms of now looking for opportunities with the CSO sector? And moreover, in terms of engagement of government, this is more like a recommendation. I would like to sort of ask you to try to listen more, and I think this is I commend you for this aspect of asking the leaders what they think, but there's more into empathetic engagement in terms of listening to why they do not want to engage or push forward certain projects or certain partnerships. It's because maybe they lack capacity, or there are some hurdles that you'd earn more from listening to them and engaging further and to understanding why really they can't push forward with this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, although it was a long question, 2 questions, but more in the sense that you were addressing the partners, the 2 partners, and not the panelists. So, and I'm not sure if we will get somebody to answer those 2 questions. Okay, the next question, we will try as much as we can. Please, can you come to the front, the one with the guy, with the, to the front desk here? We are going to Ahmed Salif.
Thank you very much. My name is Charles, and I have 2 questions. One for Dr. Kilonzo and another one for Professor Nyange. According to UNESCO report, there are only 18.3 researchers per million Tanzanians. That is way below the African average, which is 95.1 per million Africans. Now, is it feasible to have tailor-made scholarship programs that are country-specific based on the needs? So, for example, to strengthen researchers or research capacity in Tanzania, is it feasible? Because there is a need, and America is one of the leading countries in R&D, research and development. So how can we benefit from that? And Professor Nyange, are there any efforts to ensure food sovereignty in the country? Because there was a question posed on GMO, and they've become rather infamous, if I may say, because they cannot be, you can only plant the seed once, and there is a threat of affecting other plants that are not GMO through pollination. Now, while the numbers are rather satisfying, are there any effort to curb or to mitigate the negative consequences?
Yes. Next question, your colleague there.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a question, but only a contribution. You
Please be as short as possible. Yes.
Absolutely, sir. Yeah. You brought something very interesting about a comparative study between U.S.-Tanzania relations and Tanzania with other countries' relations like China, Asia, and Europe. For me, I think these countries are doing a little bit good because of the new methods of engagement or rules of engagements in a relation that they are doing. That's why they attract a kind of relation that they do. And therefore, it's now a call for United States to find a better approach on how to make a partnership with Tanzania and forget about a little bit I can call outdated approaches addressing issues like good governance, corruption, democracy, because we have learned from US itself and other countries about democracy, corruption, and good governance. And therefore, they could learn from these other countries on how they do to boost the type of relations. Something also, Mr. Chair, very short, is about the panelists and the other scholars on the approach. I still insist they need to see the contribution of Tanzania also in this kind of partnership, because in all presentations, except I think one, it was about glorifying how America has been doing to these relations, and that's very nice. But we also, as Tanzania, we also have a part in that kind of relations, in which I was expecting we could also chip in on how Tanzania contributed to this. So in future panels and other discussions, kindly we should address that too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I think the last question. That is the last question. We have our lady there on the back, the middle table. Yeah. Be as brief as you can, please. Yes.
Okay, my name is Doreen. I'm from Ipsos. I have two very brief questions. One goes to Professor Nyange. So one of the biggest challenges we have is post-harvest handling. We are looking at the horticulture value chain, we are looking at cereals, but the biggest loss that a farmer faces in this country is post-harvest loss. So what are the initiatives that are there to really manage that? Because that's where the biggest cry of Tanzanian farmers are. And my second question goes to Dr. Rehema. We are talking about university education, but when you do a labor market assessment, employability and opportunities are for TVET. And there's very little conversation around technical and vocational skills, because we are producing administrators and not the workforce, basically. That's what we are investing in. What efforts are there, or what should be done to really invest in the skill set that are needed by the market, and not administrators and managers here at university level, while the technical and vocational skills, those are the people who do the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doreen. Now we invite the panelists to reflect on those series of questions. All the panelists will be given the opportunity to do that, and we start with the members. Please, can you start reflect on all the questions or a few of them? Yeah. Please, be as brief as you can, 1 minute to 2 minutes.
Unfortunately, there was no question for me. Direct, rather support, echo the gentleman's additional contribution to the point that I've been making. And yeah, I think one could say, I think it has been brought by the late there, in terms of, and of course partly addressed by the gentleman there, about the US rethinking of their approach. Actually, what they're doing is immense and a lot, but the visibility could be brought in by the approach that they're using. And one is looking on the areas that have high impact, not they are more important than what they're doing, no, high impact. For example, she has pointed on pointing an eye on vocational training rather than the higher education, where they are more advantages. They even get loans from the government, from higher learning, student learn, whatever, body and corporate, those who are understanding that. But these from the TVET are not. And also comes from the point that I was making. The primary education, yes, But we have a more serious problem on the secondary education, where people are failing to reach the areas that the US are in the higher education and all those things. So that goes on and on to other sectors like health. If you ask people on the malaria and HIV/AIDS, yes, there are problems that need to be addressed. But if you ask the common mwananchi in terms of what is their concern, they will tell you access to health care. And, whatever it is that they are failing to address and all those stuff. In the agriculture sector, the same. If you ask people, yes, I've seen the video, it's impressive. Like, people are missing a lot of, opportunity to address their real life problems.
Thank you. Thank you, Mwemes, for your response. Next is Rehema.
Yes.
I think there were some direct questions to you and sort of be as brief as you can.
Yes, I think the first question on UNESCO or statistics on if there will be tailor-made programs for researchers in Tanzania, I think that is not my question. I think that question goes to the US officials, because they are the one who will talk about this. But on Lauren's question, yes, I agree. Even though I'm not a spokesperson for the Minister of Education, but at least I know there is something going on. I agree that the university train administrators rather than the workforce that the country will need. But currently there is a change by the Minister of Education on from change of curriculum from primary to secondary school, and universities are also changing their curriculum. And just to inform you that this comes on time because universities are on the curriculum review cycle, so they are changing their curriculum to actually accommodate the change that is happening in primary and secondary education. So that will be accommodated in the coming years. And starting from those who will be joining the university in this academic year, the next academic year, 2024-2025. Thank you.
You have been giving us a very good promise, so we should expect more academic benefits to those who are going to the universities and the schools and so forth. Thank you very much for that. Now we go to Professor Nyange. I think there were a number of issues raised in your direction, both in the agriculture sector and also some direct questions. Please, you have 3 minutes to respond.
Okay, thank you. On post-harvest loss, I totally agree that almost between 25 and 50% of what is harvested is lost. For cereals is around 20%, but for horticulture is around, in fact, is around 50%. For fishy product is 60%, so very, very high. And it makes really sense, to preserve what we have even before producing more. Yes, USAID has made a number of interventions. Maybe I'll speak about the current one is called Tuhifadhi Chakula, which is implemented in the Southern Highlands by Sakoti and Taha. So there's really effort on that, but also on improving food safety. Because of limited time, let me stop there. But with regard to sector growth, I know there's misconception about the performance of agriculture sector in Tanzania. I know there have been some public opinion, people thinking that the sector is stagnant or is maybe even regressing. But the truth is the sector is growing modestly at 4% per annum. But most importantly is that it's also transforming. I'll refer you to our joint work with the World Bank. If you look at Tanzania Economic Update of December 2020, there's really work that was done, collaboratively between the World Bank and Michigan State University that provided evidence about the transformation. We see first the rise of medium-scale farms, And downstream the value chain, we see food becoming more processed. Food is becoming purchased, and also there's a change in the consumption habit with the increased consumption of, for example, wheat, consumption of meat, dairy products, and yeah, so as it has been happening in other countries. But we also see the decrease in labor force in agriculture from 75% in 2000 to 65% currently. So that indicates transformation. So that's good news, despite many challenges. Now we'll touch base on the issue of sovereignty and the issue of GMO. I know the perception of GMO is not very favorable in this country, probably mainly because we trade with Europe more than maybe the US. In the US, I would say GMO are well accepted. In Europe, they're accepted, but with more restrictions or more regulations. And probably that's the reason also there's sensitivity on GMO. But basically, we use GMO. For example, most of you have worn used clothes, isn't it? Is that right? And most of that is GMO. And if you are wearing imported clothing, most likely to be BT cotton. So that's GMO. And definitely if you're eating cereals, most likely, yeah. Tanzania has a policy to regulate GMO. It's called the biosafety policy. And also there's a legal framework under the National Environmental Act. So all these are in place. Based on my experience, the US government is not actually promoting GMO, but there are programs to show opportunities for GMO, so not really promoting of course I cannot speak for themselves, but based on my experience. Another thing is on export to the US. I would say assistance in the agricultural sector is not conditioned that our export have to go to the US. Exports or trade depends on the competitive and comparative advantage. However, there are some products which are being exported into the US, as you saw in the report this morning, like chocolate, specialty coffee, for example, exported to Starbucks, and some of the value-added products. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Nyange. Now we go to our last speaker. Yes, please, you are most welcome.
Thank
you.
Only
2 minutes.
Thank you, Doctor. There was no specific questions for me, but again, allow me to respond to some of the generally raised issues. One, contribution of Tanzania to the US. I mean, they are there, if I speak from a private sector perspective, but again, it's not my role in terms of, I think it has a government to highlight this. The US is getting quality products, but yet at affordable price from Tanzania. They're getting profit. If $14 billion has been invested in Tanzania for the last, 10 years, again, perhaps in terms of calculations as a business, 2 or 3 times of that could be, 2 times of that investment would be profit. So would assume, estimate somewhere around $28 billion has also been made out of Tanzania. But again, Tanzania also gained a lot out of this investment. So it's the role as a host country, again, to understand and make such success story as case study to multiply to other sectors. I want to give an example. Please allow me more time. Kidogo too. Simple country like Korea got assistance in 1970 from the US and completely transformed that country. Bangladesh, again, received certain assistance in terms of access to market in the textile and garment industry. Now it moved from a $5 million industry back in 1970 to somewhere around, mentioned it, $10–20 billion industry now in 20 years. So it's our role as a host country again now to take case studies and then see how we could now customize and tailor-made. If Mzava, Red Earth, talk government and whatever they're exporting to the US, we have 4 factories that are exporting to the US and account for 80% of the export in textile and the garment. It's our role as a country now to take lessons from these 4 factories and build more, either locally driven, whatever industry, to export either to the US or any other market. So there are these other potential advantages. And as a country, I think I still insist, there is a way that we need to look at things. And from a private sector perspective, is that there are lessons, and lessons need to be capitalized and mentioned. There are issues with whatever our engagement, as I mentioned. Policies are very stringent, complying to the US, but once you comply with the US market, you can say to anybody, just a second, if you export to the US, rule of origin is 40% of non-originating material, 45% non-originating material, but the UK is 75%. So if you can say to the US under 45% rule of origin, non-originating material, you can qualify for the US market, you can qualify for the EU. So there are lessons that need to just capitalize and be understood properly. Thank you so much, and I wish that we might have some further discussions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Godfrey, and I take the opportunity to thank all the panelists for their valuable contribution to the discussion today, and we continue to support the report which has been prepared and submitted today, and we encourage everybody to also take part in that discussion going forward. We thank you very much, and on that case, let us give you a little bit of support to the panelists. I welcome the moderator for the entire session to make an announcement.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, and to your panel, another round of applause for the panel, please. We have a slight change in our program. We will be breaking for lunch, and then we'll reconvene back here. Lunch will be in the mezzanine level. People will be guiding you and directing you to exactly where we'll be having lunch, and then we'll come back for the ribbon cutting of the report.
Most importantly, the support from the US government has an impact on had an impact on the attainment of the lower middle income status for the country, which is gauged, against some of the socioeconomic indicators such as access to clean water, access to reliable electricity, and hard infrastructure such as, tarmac roads, highways, and bridges, among others. But as former presenters have presented, in terms of the healthcare, I can say the US government, through the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS and the President's Malaria Initiative, the PMI, has been instrumental in combating the HIV, specifically the high rates of HIV/AIDS and malaria incidences over the years. As you can see from the presentations that we had in the morning, the trend has been declining over the years. So it has been so far a positive trend in terms of the healthcare, and even the Ministry of Health has lauded, the works of the U.S. government in terms of, combating some of these diseases, the NDCs, the non-communicable diseases like pressure, hypertension, and diabetes, and etc. But we saw that there are other global funds, like the Gavi, that has also supported this particular sector. In terms of the education, just like Dr. Kilonzo has, highlighted, there has been, substantial support towards the education sector in terms of the scholarships and educational exchange programs like Fulbright program and the Mkapa Fellows program. A lot of Tanzanians have benefited, like Professor Nyange, who is here, and Dr. Kilonzo and the rest have also benefited from such kind of programs. Also in terms of the agriculture sector, talk of the Feed the Future program that has enabled the improved food security and improved agriculture productivity along the value chain from production to marketing. The sector has, in fact, I can say the agriculture sector is leading in terms of, receiving the, U.S. support. You can see the agriculture sector or the Ministry of Agriculture in this case, they have a lot of, programs that are dedicated towards agriculture productivity. And, in our days, we are talking of the CSA, the Climate Smart Agriculture, the Climate Smart Agriculture practices that even RIPO is also working on that, has been engaged over the past 2 years, the CSA program, training program in Kagera region. But also I heard from, in fact it was news for me, I heard from Professor Nyange who said that the support towards the sector has led to the establishment of the Sokoine University of Agriculture in Morogoro region. Also, we have heard about the infrastructure development, talk of the MCC that has been, funding infrastructure, development. Most of these, tarmac roads, thousands and thousands of kilometers, have been financed by the U.S. government. And then the U.S. government, I'm still on the G2G, because I had a lot of, burning questions from the audience asking that, why is the report not covering the ordinary citizens rather than the government? But this report was just, the scope of the report was on the G2G, the government-to-government support. So as you can see, I tried to highlight on the different sectors, like the health sector, the agriculture sector, the health sector, and now I'm also highlighting on the firm support towards the private sector development in terms of the enabling business environment, talk of trade and investment policies that have been supported by the US government, talk of the legislations, the regulations, and the governance institutions. And on the same, in fact, in light of that, I just wanted to highlight on the, on the support towards promoting good governance. The U.S. government has also done quite a good job on that, promoting on the good governance through strengthening the democratic institutions, transparency, accountability, anti-corruption practices, but also we have seen that they have also supported our military. So in terms of security also, they have done quite a lot on that. Having said that, as a forward thinker, I believe that continued collaboration between Tanzania, the United Republic of Tanzania, and the US should leverage on technology, innovations, skills, and expertise that will be very, very crucial for a sustainable relationship between these two countries. So the relationship or the collaboration should be towards those aspects that I've just highlighted in terms of technology, innovations, skills should be enhanced, and the expertise. I think the ongoing commitment of the US to support the development vision, which is phasing out, underscores a shared vision for a prosperous health and future and sustainable future. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. I couldn't have said it much better than that, so I'm going to keep these remarks very short and brief, but we wanted to thank you all again for coming out today. We think that spaces like this that bring together representatives from civil society, academia, researchers, the government, are really crucial in that we don't want reports like these to be the end of a conversation, but rather the beginning of a conversation. We didn't include hard and fast recommendations because in many ways we think that those should start here in the discussions that we're having over lunch between one another on the panels. And I've heard a great many good discussions today. And I think that this is a fruitful and inspiring groundwork for us to start thinking of these issues moving forward, not just the history of the US-Tanzanian relationship, but where we want it to go on both sides of the street. So thank you all again, and I will cede the floor to our representative from the USG.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jean Clark, Public Affairs Counselor at the U.S. Embassy, and I just share my ambassador's most humble apologies. He attended the National Media Conference this morning, which was running late, as some of you might have been following, and so we were unable to have him here on time for this program, but we really appreciate all the time and dedication you've given to the program. We especially appreciate the comments, and please rest assured we're listening. So, today at the Conference of Media Development, the key focus is freedom of expression. Freedom of expression means so much to the Tanzanian democracy. Why does this matter to you in this audience, comprised of civil society leaders, academicians, private sector leaders? Because you are the brain trust who rely on access to information and data in order to conduct the research and analysis which is vital to this nation's advancement. You've taken time this morning to hear research findings and discuss research methodology and data sets in agriculture, private sector, civil society, and academia. In this time of fast-paced technological advancements, it is critical to not only stay abreast of the advancements, but also to recognize the importance to ensure the security and quality of available data. When governments publish their data, be it birth records or agricultural production quantities, then and only then are citizens able to accurately pose and answer key questions for the health and well-being of a country. Ambassador Battle was very proud to release AidData's report about 6 weeks ago in Dodoma, as it served as the first attempt to qualify and quantify the impact of the tangible benefits of US investment for Tanzanians. Evidence-based research serves to inform and deepen our bilateral relationship. And for this, we applaud the efforts of RAPOA and AidData. Thank you very much. When we see that 66% of Tanzanian leaders surveyed said that their partnership with the US was improving economic conditions in Tanzania, particularly highlighting local job creation, vocational training and education, trade and tourism flows, and upskilling technology expertise to enter new sectors, we know that our prioritization of economic growth is bearing fruit. Like Tanzania, which hosted the Human Capital Summit last year, we know Tanzania's greatest assets are its citizens. Just this past week, Deputy Secretary of Energy Turk was here meeting with government officials and entrepreneurs, reaching out a hand to encourage the sharing of technical expertise and upskilling. We will continue to pursue these important information sharing opportunities. We're very proud of the research published through collaboration between Tanzanians and Americans, and we will continue to encourage and facilitate international scholarship, research, and publication. This past year, we have witnessed several success stories on this front. We applauded the University of Arkansas's Professor McFadden and the Tanzanian Agricultural Research Institute Professor Kilasi for publishing their recommendations for further education on zinc and micronutrient deficiencies in Tanzania, as published in the Global Food Security Journal. We also congratulated Fulbright scholar Dr. Emmanuel Mpolia at the University of Washington this year for contributing to the global publication Systematic Analysis for the Global Burden of Disease Study 2021, which was published in The Lancet earlier this year. Through our Fulbright programs and encouragement of independent educational institutional linkages, we know the future is bright for international collaboration. In fact, we were so proud to hear of Soquine University's collaboration with Michigan State University earlier today on the panel discussion. Recognizing how critical boosting public, civic, and community engagement is to Tanzania, and recognizing the importance of media literacy in this age of technological advancements, I'm very pleased today to announce that the Embassy, in partnership with the Global Engagement Center of the U.S. Department of State, is announcing a $250,000 U.S.-Tanzania Tech Challenge in September. This will be an open competition for private sector businesses and or civil society organizations to submit applications to support innovative solutions to boost civic participation, bolster media literacy, and address information integrity. The deadline is August 13th, so we hope you start thinking about this opportunity now. Participants can present tech-based solutions for education programs, gaming platforms, fact-checking tools, content authentication tools, and other topics. Proposals should particularly seek to bolster civic responsibility and community engagement, and support expanding digital literacy resources, including areas with limited media access. We look forward to hosting this U.S.-Tanzania Tech Challenge in September, on September 18th and 19th in Dar es Salaam. We trust the civil society representatives here with us today will help us to spread the word about this unique opportunity for Tanzanian small businesses and organizations alike. In closing, I thank you all for engaging on the important research presented here today by RAPOA and Aid Data. We are proud of the overall investment of the United States through government assistance, and perhaps most especially through trade, tourism, investment, philanthropy, and remittances. The estimated $2.8 billion contributed annually continues to contribute to Tanzania's growth and prosperity in many significant ways. We appreciate our partnership with Tanzania, and we appreciate our relationship with Tanzania's civil society, academic institutions, and the media. Without your dedication and rigorous contributions, Tanzania's democracy would not be where it is today. Thank you so much.
May I now request Ms. Jean Clark, the Public Affairs Counselor in the U.S. Embassy, and Dr. Mari to come up front to the stage, please, so that we can cut the ribbons for the report. You've taken photos, enough photos? Okay, that marks the end of our program today. We thank you very much for your attendance and your patience and your participation, and we wish you a good day for the rest of this Tuesday. Yes, I believe copies will be shared to everyone, and you can just go ahead.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We had earlier postponed the group photo session, so I would welcome all of us if we could occupy the front space for a group photo as we prepare to disembark. Thank you.